Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Prospective Applicants Workshop as part of the Massachusetts Innovation Career Pathways, Technical Assistance and Professional Learning. My name is Annie Leonard, and I'll be facilitating this morning's workshop. We're going to pause briefly to allow folks to jump into the Zoom. And while they're doing that, we invite you to update your Zoom name with your school or district affiliation, as well as your pronouns. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We will be introducing our facilitation team shortly. But just a couple of technical notes to make sure that this workshop is accessible to everyone before we begin. So we do record this workshop, and that's so that we can post it on our Community of Practice website, along with all the resources for the workshop afterwards. And closed captioning is also available live in the workshop. Please follow the instructions on the screen to access closed captioning via Otter. So just to let you know a little bit about who is in the room today to assist with the workshop. My name is Annie Leonard. I'm the Director of Programs at the Center for Collaborative Education. I started my career in Massachusetts public education in 1993, and I'm proud on behalf of CCE to be partnering with DESE to support the Innovation Career Pathways initiative. My colleague Allison from CCE is also here today. She is doing all of the tech support in the background. So if there's anything that you run into that's a technological issue during the course of the workshop, please feel free to message Allison and she will do her best to help you out. And now I'd like to pass to my DESE colleague, Jennifer Gwatkin, to introduce herself and other DESE folks joining us today.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to see so many of you here, faces both familiar as well as new. I'm Jennifer Gwatkin. I've been with DESE for 10 years and working on Innovation Career Pathways since their inception in 2017, when we were just a twinkle in the eyes of DHE, EOE, and DESE. Here I go, using acronyms. But thank you all for being here. I know that this is just the start of what will be I would say a protracted process, but hopefully you'll find it to be a very supportive one. We have a lot of good information we're going to share today and lots of opportunities for you to connect with our team as you go through the designation process, should you choose to pursue it. So I'd like to introduce my colleague, Latoya. I will give the mic to her in just a second, but also acknowledge that Joe Wyman is here from our team. He is also a liaison. We'll be working with many of the districts, well, actually the districts in the western part of the state specifically. But you will hear from him during the presentation today. Latoya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Happy that you were able to be here with us today. I'm Latoya Tavernier. I am a liaison in the Office of College, Career, and Technical Education at DESE. I work with Jennifer on Innovation Career Pathways, and I also work with schools that have other pathway programs like Chapter 74 and non-Chapter 74 or Career Connections. But again, I'm here as a facilitator, so please feel free to chat with me or DM me or email me, and I'll be happy to help.
Thank you. And I scanned, I don't think we have any other DESE folks here at the moment. Forgive me if I've missed anybody. We have quite the participant list, but if anybody else arrives, I will let you guys know they're here.
That sounds good. Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that we have a guest panel here today from Reading Memorial High School, led by Principal Jessica Callanan, and you will have a chance to meet Jessica and her team in just a couple of minutes. But to get things started today, we like to do a connections activity to begin. And as soon as I can get my Zoom controls to wake up, there we go. I'm going to launch a poll that's going to invite you to just let us know where you are in the Innovation Career Pathways process. We know that in the room today, we have representatives of about 29 schools and districts that would be brand new to Innovation Career Pathways, as well as some folks who have been designated and implementing pathway programs for a number of years. Everyone is welcome, and this poll will just invite you to choose one of these three options to describe where you fit in that those three levels. So just take a moment and tell us your current level of experience. So I'll leave that poll open for another couple of seconds, but want to move us forward now to briefly review the goals for today. So what we're hoping by the end of the workshop is that you will have increased your understanding of Innovation Career Pathways, specifically the process of applying for designation, and all the resources and supports that are available to you during the planning and application process. We'll do that by sharing resources, but also by hearing directly from experienced practitioners in the field, and hope that you'll have a chance to make some connections, or at least learn how to make more connections across our network. And we're going to do that by wrapping up connections very shortly, and then moving into some content where we'll overview some important information about Innovation Career Pathways. And then we'll also be hearing from Joe during that time period to share some information specifically about connecting activities and MassHire and how that can contribute to your planning and development of Innovation Career Pathways. Then we'll turn to our panelists from Reading Memorial High School to hear about their process of pathway development, hoping to leave some time for Q&A, and also to review some of the network resources and next steps and advice for prospective applicants. So we hope that you're able to stay with us for the entire workshop. There will be a follow-up email tomorrow, and eventually we will, within the week, be able to post a recording of this event on our website. So speaking of resources, I just want to ask Allison to pop a link into the chat for the resource guide for this workshop. As I mentioned in the email that I sent this morning, we know it can be challenging when we share a lot of links very quickly during a workshop. And so to save you the worry of trying to capture all those links, we've compiled them in a resource guide. And we ask you to keep that on hand during the workshop. So when we're referencing a particular link or resource, you can find it on the resource guide and check it out, and then you'll have it for going forward. All right, so thank you to everyone who responded to the poll. You should be able to see the results now, and it's a remarkably mathematically straightforward split with about 50% indicating that you're new to Innovation Career Pathways and in the early planning stages, and then 25% each responding that you're an existing designee considering an additional application in the coming school year, and another 25% indicating that you're just here to learn more. So again, welcome. Whatever your status is, we are glad that you are here. So as we begin with some background on Innovation Career Pathways, I will pass the mic to Jennifer Gwatkin.
Great. Thank you so much, Annie. So what are Innovation Career Pathways? Innovation Career Pathways, notice that I got spotlit. better be on my best behavior. So they connect student learning to one of 6 broadly defined industry sectors that are in demand in the state economy and guide students toward relevant post-secondary education and training options. Those particular industry sectors were agreed upon through looking at a blueprinting process that went on with the Workforce Skills Cabinet, which involves folks at the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, folks at the Executive Office of Education, but it was an extensive practice. And all the pathways are designed to increase equitable access and outcomes by eliminating barriers to student participation and success. You'll hear a lot about that throughout the presentation today, how the pathways should be designed to facilitate this. But the fundamentals of pathways. So at the core, they're based on partnerships between high schools, your local Mass Higher workforce boards, and employers. I know that we have colleagues here from our workforce boards. It's great for you to be here as key partners in this work. An important distinction with innovation career pathways is that they're broad. They focus on broad industry sector alignment. They're not occupation specific. This is a contrast to our Chapter 74, our CTE programs that really zero in on specific occupations. As a note, innovation career pathways are for our academic and comprehensive high schools in Massachusetts. Our wall-to-wall technical schools are not eligible to apply. There's coursework that's both technical and advanced in innovation career pathways. The technical coursework should be aligned to industry recognized credentials. That is focused on some skill development that's in alignment with the industry sectors. Advanced courses, there are multiple ways of getting to this. Advanced placement, international baccalaureate, dual enrollment through partnerships with area community colleges or four-year institutions. There's an entire list of courses that DESE has determined are advanced for accountability, like the big A accountability purposes. Those are acceptable as well. But we do want the courses to be aligned to the content and the pathway, or really the pathway sector. And then I think this is the hallmark of innovation career pathways. There's a 100-hour culminating work-based learning experience that can either be an internship or a capstone. So here are the 6 broad industry sectors. Advanced manufacturing, I think that's still in the lead with the number of pathways that we have across the Commonwealth. Business and finance, environmental and life sciences. We have some schools that are taking more of a biomedical approach, some more of an environmental approach. Healthcare and social assistance, information. This is where more of a computer science oriented pathway might fall. And then our latest one, clean energy, which is a pilot this past year. Reading was among the schools in the pilot, but it is now open for folks broadly. And here's a current breakdown of pathways by sector. So yes, advanced manufacturing still in the lead. Healthcare and social assistance shortly behind it. You can see the breakdown of others. We had a big uptick this year in information applicants. So how many pathways are there now? There are 228 of them all over the Commonwealth, from Nantucket all the way to out here in the Berkshires where I live. And we're in 97 schools, which is phenomenal. We had kind of hoped that we would hit the 100 school mark this last year. Not quite. We'll get there this next application cycle. But with the additional students who are enrolling in the programs in this next fall from the schools that were just designated this spring, we'll have more than 8,000 students involved in innovation career pathways, which is really like phenomenal, thinking that we're bringing transformative learning experiences to students.
All right, so now we're going to pass the mic to Latoya, who is going to review information about the 5 guiding principles that really form the backbone of the design of innovation career pathways.
Thank you, Annie. And I'm going to go over this pretty quickly because our guests are going to go over this. So when we're looking at innovation career pathways, we're looking for you to have fulfilled 5 different guidelines. Equitable access. Now, in terms of admissions and retention in your program, we're looking at who has access to it. Are you available to students that represent your student population? Guided academic pathways. where we're asking that there is a series of courses, technical and advanced courses, that are a part of your pathway program that is related to the industry that you have picked for your pathway program. Enhanced student support, so the idea that all students will be able to engage in the curriculum and in the work by providing them with the support that they need. When we're talking about equitable access, that's what we're talking about, that every student gets the type of support that they require in order to do well in the program. Connection to career, this is where we are actually making sure that the learning that the students are doing are attached to the industry that they're learning about. And so making sure that the internship or the capstone experience is something that connects what the kids are learning to the careers that they're interested in, they're exploring. And for effective partnerships, this is the partnerships between your employer partners, between your community and the school and the students, and making sure that when you're building, and your mass hire, did I forget mass hire? Did I forget mass hire? Because they're very, very important, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that. So making sure that there are these effective partnerships between your school community, your mass hire, and your employer partner, so that the students are receiving the experience that we are hoping they will receive from Innovation Career Pathways. So I hope that was a good general understanding of it, and I will pass it back over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Latoya. That was very concise, and there's a lot there for schools to dig into. So I just wanted to mention that in your resource guide, there is a link to a self-assessment tool, and we encourage teams after the workshop to consider using that tool as a way of understanding what your current strengths and challenges might be in the areas of each of these 5 guiding principles. So with that, we are going to pass over to Joe Wyman from DESE, who is going to be talking with us about mass hire boards and connecting activities as part of the landscape to understand with innovation career pathways.
Good morning, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to continue the conversation here, focusing specifically on the partnerships with the mass hire board. So as Jennifer and Latoya both sort of alluded to, one of the requirements of having an innovation pathway program is that partnership with your local mass hire board. So I really want to talk about sort of the role that mass hire boards can play in innovation pathway programs, or even schools more broadly, even outside the innovation pathway programs, and how that can support the development of your new programs. So, but first, for those that may not be that familiar, who are the mass hire boards? They are local agencies across the state. There are 16 of them that work on workforce-related issues. So they're not exclusively working with students in the sort of secondary school experience. They also work with post-secondary and adults in supporting the development of effective workforce strategies for each of the regions that they support. Part of that does include, a significant part of that does include working with youth, including youth employment programs, youth training programs, and career to employment kinds of programs, including innovation pathways and connecting activities. As I mentioned, there are 16 boards across the state. Here's a map of the different regions each board serves. So each highlighted area is one workforce board. In some areas, they map pretty closely or exactly to county boundaries. In other places, it's a little bit more complicated with multiple boards serving parts of different counties.
And you can find a link to a resource that will get you contact information in our resource guide.
Yep, and at the end of this presentation, there's also a list, so you'll be able to use that as well. So in terms of the youth career services offered by mass hire boards, there's a range of services, including the youth employment programs for out of school or at-risk youth, in school, but they also offer in-school career exploration activities, including connecting activities and youth works, and managing some grants such as the STEM grant program. If you had a HESP grant, the mass hire boards were involved with those as well. And they also work with educators and school leaders on the development of career education programming, including Innovation Pathways, Chapter 74 programs, and other grant-related programming. Talking a little bit more specifically about connecting activities, this honestly is where I'm most involved and engaged with the MassHire boards. They support programming in primarily high schools, but also in some middle schools around career awareness, career exploration, and career immersion activities, so that students can learn more about career opportunities available to them after high school, as well as the education or training requirements to pursue particular career fields. So as they learn more about specific career fields, students will also learn about what kind of education or training is required in order to sort of pursue that career. I really wanted to highlight the Massachusetts Career Development Model. I think this applies, well, I think it applies to secondary experiences for students as they pursue career-related education activities. But I think it really maps very well with Innovation Pathway Program. As students enter secondary schools, as they enter middle school, they should go through a process of sort of thinking about what are their interests, doing the self-discovery part, what are their personal interests and skills, and how does that map to a particular career interest potentially. As they sort of develop those, so as they go through that self-discovery, they can move into career awareness, starting to think about what are potential career paths that might interest them. And this is an opportunity for schools as they implement Innovation Pathways to link that career awareness activities to the potential pathways students can become involved in their high school. So for students that have a specific interest in, information technology, and if you have an Innovation Pathway program for information, it's an opportunity to make sure they're aware of that and can take advantage of that as they enter high school. And then as you move into high school and you begin more career exploration, this is where the connecting activities work for the MassHire boards, and the connection with the Innovation Pathway programming can sort of overlap, right? So students should be engaging in career exploration activities, whether it's job shadowing, informational interviews, career panels, tours of local industry partners. They're starting to learn more and more about particular careers, what the opportunities are, what it's like to work in those fields, and then finally, they move on to career immersion, where they're having much deeper experiences in a specific field and learning more deeply about what the opportunities are and what it's like to work in those fields. And that's really, we're talking about in particular the capstone that could be a part of your innovation pathway, or the internship, depending on which model you're using. So you can see, I think, how this maps well to the Innovation Pathway program. It also maps well with connecting activities work that MassHire boards are doing. And if there was a Venn diagram, I think it would be close to a complete circle there. So I also wanted to highlight MyCap. Again, this is another part of an Innovation Pathway program, another requirement for implementation that all students in Innovation Pathways go through MyCap. It's also sort of the space where students can engage in some of those career awareness, career exploration activities, including the MyCap, the connecting activities work. So I think the way I would suggest a school think about this as designing a MyCap experience that incorporates the connecting activities and aligns with the Innovation Pathway programs that you potentially are applying for. And the goal would be to not have siloed systems where students are engaging in different activities with different people that aren't connected, or trying to duplicate resources. So students go through their MyCap experience like all students do, but then also have a separate MyCap for Innovation Pathway. Thinking about how you integrate those pieces so that they're supportive of each other, are less resource intensive, and sort of are aligned and make sense from a student perspective, I think is a useful part of your planning process as you're thinking about a new Innovation Pathway program. Here is just a piece I wanted to highlight from MyCap. You might think about MyCap as really career-oriented and career exploration, post-secondary planning, those kinds of things, and it is those things. It's also there are also an opportunity to talk about the social and emotional competencies that students should be developing as they move through secondary school. And there's an opportunity to link those to career skills, really, the kinds of skills that students need to be successful in the workplace, and making that connection for students that these social and emotional competencies aren't just about being successful while they're in middle school or high school. There really are skills that they will need as an adult to be successful in the workplace and in society generally. So I just wanted to highlight that as another opportunity to sort of link the MyCap process with the career exploration and development activities that are all part of MyCap. So I also wanted to think something we've talked about in some of the MyCap trainings, if any of you have attended those, and that's how Mass Hire boards can play some role in the MyCap development. If you don't have a MyCap curriculum yet fully in place, when you're thinking about that, the scope and sequence that you might develop for students as they move from middle school into high school, you might start with what are the things we're already doing. I mentioned we've talked about the connecting activities work in this presentation. So many of your schools are already doing that. You may or may not be aware of it, but many or maybe even all of the schools on this call are engaged in connecting activities work with Mass Hire boards. So you can start by saying, what is that work that's already happening and where does that fit in our scope and sequence? But they can also work as a sort of consultant or thought partner to help you think about your MyCap scope and sequence, and the specifically around the career exploration activities. What are the sort of activities we can engage in with students so that they learn more about the career options available to them and the post-secondary requirements for education or training that might be aligned to a specific career they're interested in. But I guess it's really what I wanted to highlight here again was this idea of Mass Hire boards integrating their work effectively into the MyCap process and as a part of your innovation pathway program as students learn more and more about career fields.
Joe, thank you so much. And oh, sorry, go ahead with industry partners.
Yeah, so the last thing I'll highlight is you, as a part of your innovation pathway program, you may have an industry council or some sort of group that meets with some regularity to sort of review your innovation pathway programming and support your work there. And just another role that a Mass Hire board could play would be helping you identify and communicate with potential industry partners that could be part of that group, supporting communication there, and as well as potentially sitting on the board itself. And then also finally, helping students identify and get placed in internships of whatever kind. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And as I mentioned, the contact information for your local Mass Hire board is linked in the resource guide, and as is a list from Joe that includes names and phone numbers for Mass Hire contacts. So we know that especially early in the process, sometimes schools wish that there was a straightforward, step-by-step, simple checklist for innovation career pathways. But the reality is that your pathways need to be developed in the context of your own school and community and the local and regional employment landscape, including the Mass Hire board for your region. So it's not just a matter of seeking out that MOU or letter of support from the Mass Hire board, but really building a relationship where you can understand what is already happening in terms of connecting activities and other innovation career pathway adjacent activities, and then what new collaborations you can build with your Mass Hire partners in service of your students learning through innovation career pathways. So it's not a straightforward landscape, Joe, and we really appreciate you taking the time to orient us. And Jennifer, is there anything you'd like to jump back into to highlight at this point?
Yeah, no, thank you, Joe. Excellent overview. And I think that this segment of our workshop really, it emerged from when we did our new designee welcome back in April. I think there's a need to sort of re-emphasize or maybe reorient folks to like really all of the offerings of MassHire. And if I could offer a bit of advice at this juncture, it's connect early and often with your MassHire. They're amazing partners. I would love it if our MassHire folks who are here could introduce themselves in the chat. Because you're here, you're a critical partner, and yeah, in fact, schools like it's your number one partner, really, MassHire, both through the designation process and obviously in implementation. And I put in the chat earlier, if you're not sure what MassHire region you're in, I know it can be a little bit nebulous. Feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to transition to our panel from Reading Memorial High School. As you are listening to Joe and Jennifer and LaToya, if questions have come up, I encourage you to note them down and to continue to do that as you're listening to our guest panelists from Reading, so that when we get to Q&A, you remember what it is that you wanted to ask. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Reading Memorial High School Principal Jessica Callanan to introduce her team.
Thank you, Annie. Good morning, everybody. Our team might be a little sleepy because we had our senior prom last night, so. Sorry, Annie, I keep getting muted. Okay, there we go. All right, sorry, everybody. So, good morning. I am Jess Callanan. I'm the principal here at Reading Memorial High School. This is my second year here, and last school year I was the Director of Academic Achievement, which is a unique title, but basically was overseeing the development of programs like Innovation Career Pathways, and then moved into this role, the new role this year, as well as maintaining the hat for the other role. So one of the big pieces I hope everybody takes away from today is that it does take a village. You cannot do this by yourself. And so that's why I asked my team to be here today, and a couple of other people that were going to be here are not, but I wanted to emphasize how important it is to build a strong team in this work. And so the first person I want to introduce is Lynna Williams. She is our Director of School Counseling, has a wealth of knowledge, and she will be adding to the presentation or as we go through. Next, Megan Rondo isn't able to join us today. She is one of our school counselors and oversaw the expansion of our internship program and helped with grant management this year, which is very key and important to making sure that we're prepared once our students get to that point of that are in the pathways to internships, and that we're ready to develop those. And then we also have Ray Albright, who is our science department head, and you'll see from our slides that the science department is very much involved with our pathways. And last but certainly not least, we have Allison Williams, who is the head of math, business, and computer science. Her job just keeps expanding. And so she is here to talk about her role in this whole process as well. So the first thing that, and I do really encourage people to put questions in the chat, because what I tried to do is kind of highlight what we think is important, like advice, but also where we made mistakes. And so just to kind of outline where we are, we have pathways that were approved that we implemented this year in advanced manufacturing, information in both computer science and digital media. And then we applied for 2 new pathways, one in clean energy and one in healthcare and social assistance, which will begin next year. So we definitely learned a lot from year 1 to year 2. The first thing I just wanted to kind of emphasize and talk about is the importance of learning from others. And I'm going to turn this over to Lynna to talk a little bit about what we've done to learn from other schools that are already engaged in this work.
Thank you, Jess. I am happy to be here. And, we started the process 2 years ago when Jess came in, and when she first told us about innovation pathways and what we were going to do, as the director of school counseling, I was like, how is this going to work? And I just had trouble understanding all of the pieces until we went to visit Uxbridge. And I can't recommend it enough to people who are just starting in the process to be able to go in and see a school who is living it and have been doing it for a few years. It was a game changer. I came back from the visit and I told everybody here I wanted to move to Uxbridge. As a mom, I wanted my kids to go to school there. And then, Jess Callahan and the superintendent convinced me that it would be great if we could just do that here as opposed to you moving. So one of the things that really struck me when I was there is how much the students really valued their education. And when we went, it was clear that students were engaged in their classes. There was a lot of hands-on learning. You had students with varying academic levels working together in the same classes. The whole school, you could tell that the students valued being there, and they were in classes and not in the hallways. And the things that they were doing in their pathways, they were making a lot of things to constantly improve their school, which gave them a sense of ownership. And the panel, the morning that we went to visit, the students weren't prepped for the panel discussion. They were really just pulled out of their classes to talk with us and to see their genuine excitement for the work that they were doing and the path that they had career-wise and what they were going to do after school, after high school, was really exciting. And I definitely left that visit saying, we're doing this. And by going there and visiting, it was easy for me to come back and talk to our staff who also were skeptical of no, what we originally thought is not what this is. And just to see it in action, was very impressive for me. So I highly recommend it if you have not had a chance to do that, to please go to a school that is living this and the students feel a part of the Pathway program.
Thanks, Lena. Our next piece of advice in your process is, this is absolutely not required, but it was a kind of how I approached it last year, was to build an advisory board. And all the people on this call were part of that, in addition to our special education department head. But also we looped in our higher ed partners and as well as our industry partners. And we met once a month last year to kind of talk through the development of our pathways and how we were going to approach it, and what would the classes be, and who's doing the planning and who's doing the teaching. And sometimes it was a little bit of an unwieldy group because it's so many different entities, and Mass Hire was also part of that, I should say. And but it helped to create buy-in and understanding about the work we were doing and build relationships with our partners. And one of the things that Ray Albright and I went and visited Weston and Sampson, who is our advanced manufacturing partner, and we met with them, on their site. And I think those kinds of things help to endear schools, to, you don't have to do that, but to work with our industry partners. And another thing I think is we tried very hard to provide time and compensation for teachers to do planning that are actually teaching the classes, if they weren't classes that already existed here as part of the pathway, to further develop them, to expand them from a half year to a full year. And we did that through the planning grant. And so the planning grant, essentially goes to the work that teachers are doing. So I want to turn next to talking about our process with MyCap, and also let Lena talk about that and how we've incorporated it as a whole school, as well as Allison Williams was also attended the MyCap presentations last year with us as well. And then Lena, if you have time, we'll talk a little bit about the middle schools and how we've worked with them.
Sure. So as far as the MyCap, I have been thankful that I work in a department where we have been incorporating the MyCap for many years. And we have a really solid developmental guidance program. We have the luxury of having guidance seminars for every grade level where we meet with every student anywhere between 6 and 8 times per year in groups. And then we also meet with them individually. And we have a nice plan that flows from 9th grade to 12th grade with all of the things that we want students to learn and participate in. So the reason why I mentioned that is because most schools, you already have something in place. So you're not reinventing the wheel. But what we wanted to do is just take it to the next level for our innovation pathway kids. And that's where we're in this process right now. So we have followed the career aspect of things and making sure that students have access to, job shadowing programs, to building a resume and things like that. But now we want to take it to the next level and make sure that our innovation pathway students truly understand the work that they're doing in the classes, how this relates to future career plans. And I think that is an important piece, but it's not a heavy lift. So for those of you who already have a solid developmental guidance program, I just want to emphasize that it's not a huge amount of work, but it is so valuable to be doing this for the students. And our students who are developing, starting with activity sheets and then going to resumes, and they're practicing interview skills. It's helping them with finding part-time jobs, things like that. Students are really enjoying it, and the parents are really thankful for the work that we are doing, and it pays off with them doing internship programs and things like that. So if anybody has questions about the MyCap, and if you work in the counseling department or you're an administrator and you want to figure out how to do it, I feel really good about the work that we are doing and the feedback that we're getting from parents as well as teachers and the students. I'd be happy to talk with anyone. But one of the things that I just want to let you know that you're probably already doing so much of this important work already. It's just a matter of mapping out what you've done and where do you want to go. This year, the counseling department really focused on work-based learning for our PD. And next year, our goal is to incorporate that as a whole school for having any teachers who want to join our group in a professional learning after school program, and how can we incorporate that more into the regular ed classes.
Thanks, Lynette. Allison, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, Jess, I'd love to. So in addition to being the head of the department, I also am a classroom teacher and supervise classroom teachers. And I think that having the innovation pathways and the kids really being able to dig in with their school counselors periodically throughout the year to think about what they want for their future definitely helps to increase their engagement. So whereas before kids might have wondered, when am I ever going to use this? They can definitely see like, oh, because I know that through something that I've done during my guidance seminar, I know that this is my post-high school trajectory. And so I need to take this class for this reason. And I know that I need to focus on these activities and assignments. So I think overall, it's been a really positive addition to our school. And it's something that our students have really risen to the challenge and taken ownership in their classrooms on a daily basis.
Thanks, Allison.
Sure.
The next thing is I would love Ray to talk about how he went about recruiting his teachers to do this. And this is kind of where I think we learn from one year to the next, right? Like, or at least I did. So our first year I came in, I was the director of academic achievement. The principal and superintendent were like, we want this to happen. We want to do it in these pathways. But they had already kind of decided the pathways they wanted to do. And then that was mainly in engineering or advanced manufacturing and computer science. And so we did work forward with that. And it's good, like I think we're excited and they're good pathways and they're strong pathways. But then this year with our new pathways, I think we went about it in a different way. And so Ray, can you talk about how kind of you promoted that amongst your staff and got garnered buy-in? I always say, like, if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, like, would this continue, right? Like and that's kind of the test. I do not want to get hit by a truck, but you know, if that were the tragedy were to happen, would it continue? So Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So I think the best way to describe the buy-in process for us is to actually go back to the year before Jess showed up, when this had been floated to the science department, and the science department very much was like, we're not interested. And that's part of the reason for that, is because it was sort of floated to us similarly to PLTW, which was a thing that our department had done in the past, not enjoyed in the past, and sort of moved beyond. How many times can I say past? And one of the things that came out of that meeting when it was first floated to us was this idea where we were like, but look at all the people in the room. We have, you know, environmental biologists, we have engineers, we had, you know, virologists. Like, we had people in our department with a whole host of diverse skills around science. And we were sort of like put off at the idea that, like, we'll just use this program that somebody else has so we can do this thing. And so one of the things about buy-in really started with trying to look reflectively at who we were and what skills and interests we already had. And so even 2 years ago, when we started the engineering pathway, we actually already had engineering classes in place. We had some classes that were our versions of years of modification of PLTW structures. And so in an effort to build that first advanced manufacturing style pathway, we were like, all right, well, we need another course. What do we want to do? And so we had these semester-long electives that we offered, one of which was environment and energy. And we were like, well, why don't we, you know, add an engineering spin to that and make that an environmental engineering class? And then that was sort of where our first sort of like level of excitement started to come, because it was like something that we had already done. We were making it more. We were, you know, we have a lot of environmental scientists on staff, so we were sort of like engaging with the things the staff was interested in. And it made it a little bit unique, actually. Like, having that class sort of prepped us later for the clean energy pathway. So, you know, it wasn't that it wasn't rocky, right? There were points where people were like, why are we doing this? We already have this. What's the deal? There were even some like scheduling concerns, because we took a class that kids would take for a semester. We made it a full year. So we had to make sure we structured the class so that kids not in the pathway could actually still take it as a semester course. But it was less of a trial because our teachers were interested in what was going on. And then once we sort of dealt with that, the following year, I had talked to a couple teachers, and we had a couple classes already in place. So Jess had mentioned to me that the clean energy pathway was a thing that they were looking for schools to pilot. And since we already had this strong environmental bend, we actually took one of the courses that's in our engineering pathway and are using it to sort of double dip. So it applies to both the engineering pathway and the clean energy pathway, right? And then we also have another class that was the partner of our original semester-long environmental energy class. And we expanded that one to be a full year. And so we have this sort of pathway where students are looking at the challenges that we're currently facing in the environment, then potential ways to solve it. And then as our advanced, like our highest level advanced coursework option, there was already an AP Environmental Science. So that worked out to sort of fit in what we were trying to do by looking at the things we already did. Our social assistance pathway, the way that we originally thought of that internally was as a public health pathway. And that comes out of, obviously, we're all just lived through a pandemic. My experience as the AP biology teacher, I had a lot of students who were really discussing, like, I'm going to go to this college and do public health. I'm going to go to this college. And we already had a course on site that had been taught for years called Epidemics and Diseases in Society. And so we also had just started another course called Scientific Ethics and Literacy. And so when we started looking again at the things we already did, we were like, all right, well, why wouldn't we take this and build another pathway out of it? And so I think that's really the thing you have to understand when you're trying to think about the way that your staff's going to react, because we all know that, like, When you work in a school, you're just overtaxed, just across the board. And so to try to get people to embrace changes, you have to start with somebody that's interested in it, right? And then as you move forward, what you want to do is look at the things that you're already doing and see how you can take them to build this structure that people will be like, hey, I like the thing that we're doing, and I'm actually excited about how I might be able to expand.
Thank you, Ray. I don't want to do all the talking, which is why I recruited my team here to help me out. But I want to make sure we get to everything. So I just want to quickly say, when I wrote here as a piece of advice, promotion to all stakeholders, someone that is working on this project needs to, the department leads really are working with the staff, and making sure we have staff buy-in. And I'm working with the department heads. And then someone has to do the promotion to the community to make sure that you control the narrative around what an innovation pathway is and what an innovation career pathway is not. Because we learned last year quickly, if you do not fill in that narrative, it will be created for you and it may not be correct. Like some people are saying, this is absolutely for not kids that aren't going to college. Well, that might be true, but it also could be true for kids that are going to college, or what are you doing internships for? You just want kids out of the building. I was like, that is completely false, and so we just, meet those, opinions head on. Also, a lot of promotion with the school committee so that you garner support with the school committee, as well as the district administration. And me and Lynna and the department leads, like we also push in and talk to the middle school teachers. I've done a lot of work, like sitting down with middle school teachers, so have the department heads, and we go down to the middle school students and talk to them as well about the transition, but also specifically promoting innovation career pathways. One of our target groups is females, and we had a separate meeting where I met with the female 8th grade students last year with some of our students that weren't even in the pathways, but were heavily involved in STEM, and to inspire, students to take part in it. Sometimes there's a little worry over committing to something as a freshman, but I always say, if you decide to step out of it, we're not going to cut off your left hand. Like you can still make changes and choices and, and things like that. So we can, Annie, go to the next slide if you, let's see. I think that I already talked a little bit about targeted messaging here. We do try to celebrate acceptances. So using the grants to get some swag, whether it's a t-shirt or a keychain or something like that. So the kids feel celebrated and special. Like right now we're sending out our acceptances for students that applied, through our very brief application, the incoming 8th graders. And we're going to the middle schools and giving them t-shirts and, celebrating that and sending emails and things like that. So they know they're accepted. In full disclosure, we accept everyone. Like we do not turn away anybody. But I think that it's fun and they're excited about being part of something, and then something I did leave off of here is that we tried this year to have a targeted field trip for each pathway. So, we sought out partners or industry partners or higher ed partners to take students and have the teachers go with them, to these different venues or sites for field trips so that they get a little bit of exposure to that as a 9th grade. Let's see.
Can I chime in something real quick, Jess?
Yeah.
I actually think that don't turn away any students thing is sort of an important reflective moment, right? So like at the top of these pathways, there's going to be courses that are typically the kind of things that are points where students are turned away for one reason or another. And so I think there needs to be sort of a in-school culture reflection around what it is you're actually trying to accomplish. That was the thing that luckily we sort of have here, right? Like we have at least 3 AP classes that generally attract students who don't know if they're the kind of student that should take AP, which is not a thing I would prefer that the students think, but you know, it would be ridiculous for me to deny that they do think that. And ours is set up in such a way so that we want those students to try. And it just turns out that a lot of those classes are the culminating, you know, advanced courses in our pathways. And so I think it is important that there needs to be sort of like either a cultural reflection or maybe even a reset to say, we want everybody to learn at the best way they can as part of this pathway, because some of these kids will leave and go right into a career that is somehow related to the things that they've learned, and some of them will go on to study more of this and in, you know, the next level, whether it be college or some sort of apprenticeship work. But like, everybody can do it. They just might not get to the same point by the time we're done with them.
Thank you, Ray. We are pushing up against time, but I think we can do this in 3 minutes, guys, and then we can answer questions. Lena, do you want to talk a little bit about internships, or do you want me to start?
No, I'm happy to. So
Okay.
we've had an internship program for many years, and for the longest time it was, you know, 10, 20, sometimes we'd get up to 30 students who would participate. And our internship program previously was for fourth quarter, where seniors could leave and do an internship for their fourth quarter. What we did last year is we increased the program, like we doubled it. I want to say that we more than doubled it. I want to say that we were like somewhere around 90 students last year of seniors participating. And we doubled it this year, and we had 190 students participating, which was 2/3 of the class, approximately. One of the nice things about the internships is that it's not, right now, it's not specifically for innovation career pathway students. We've opened it up to all of our seniors, and we had students participating in some really amazing internships, a variety of different careers, partnered up with different businesses and stuff. And one of the reasons that we did this, and I think that this was really genius on Jess's part, is that we wanted to work out all the kinks of the internships before we got to a place where our innovation career pathway kids are doing it. So there's so much work that is involved in organizing, especially with the amount of students that we have participating. But at the end of the internship, students have to do a presentation, they have to turn in a project. And what's nice is that it's really highlighting to the teachers and our faculty all the wonderful things that they are learning, that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn if they were staying in their classes and getting senioritis and all of that other fun stuff that comes along with the end of the senior year. But one of the things that I just want to emphasize, like, we had a person who was she received a stipend. One of the counselors received an extra stipend to help with the internship piece. And I think this position was so crucial to making the internship program successful, because there is a ton of paperwork and communication that goes into it. Just what Jess was saying, with other things that we're doing, you got to get ahead of the messaging, because if you don't, then the community is going to create their own messages. So having somebody who could designate extra time to do it was really beneficial. Is there anything else that you wanted to add with that, Jess?
Just that this is really an important space to engage MassHire, because they can definitely help guide, the internship process, and there are grants available that you can apply for STEM to compensate, as kind of you're not going to get everybody, but you can target your innovation career pathway students. Also, somebody put in a question, what if they don't finish their 100 hours? I mean, they have to. So you have to figure out a way for them to do it. Right now we are using the fourth quarter space for seniors. You also, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can use the summer between junior and senior year.
Yes, correct.
Yes. And you can, like, some of our students that take a lot of AP classes are stressed about fitting this in. So we can also have a capstone class. Like, we applied for both. I don't know if that's regular practice, but to make it more accessible for students. And then partnering, like we're partnering with the Work-Based Learning Alliance. We started that last year as well. Can't say enough about them as an organization to really help and support schools around developing meaningful internships that are linked to industries in the pathways, and also interests, what kids are interested in. And so you can even do an internship in-house, like a reverse internship, but have it be a capstone class. We're not there yet because we're only this is our first year of implementation. But that is my vision for where this will go. We are a little bit over. Let me see. Can I just open it up to Allison and Ray and Lynn if there's anything else they wanted to add before we move into answering questions? I'm trying to be respectful of our timeline.
I don't have anything additional to add. I know I couldn't keep up with the whole chat. I know that there's a bunch of questions there.
Yeah,
but
I'm trying to answer them as we go. But I will just say, like, keep a pulse on your data management. Like, you need someone that does the SIMS reporting in your district to make sure the students are recorded as Innovation Pathway students, to make sure the kids are in the right classes. That takes some work, and you don't want to do it when the kids are seniors, right? Like, you want to do it each year and build as you go. And then stay on top of your grant use. I know it's such a burden to have grants, but that's a joke. Grants are amazing, but you do have to work to plan out the expenditure of those funds, right? And Jennifer always says we don't want the money back, so please use it effectively. And so you have to have a plan and have an approach to do that. The last thing we included in here is just our kind of promotional brochure for our courses, which has been tweaked a little to reflect our new pathways for next year. And I use this all the time, when talking to different groups. We give it to parents, we give it to students, just as something for people to have tangibly. I do use some of the grant funds to print these, even though I know we don't want to use paper, but it's good for people to have something to reference. And then making sure what's in here aligns with your program of studies, which is really important too.
Jess, could you say a word
Yep.
about the application process? You mentioned that that there's a simple application and really open enrollment in your pathways.
Yeah, so I mean, I think our application process, a question, it's like 3 questions. Like, what is your name? What pathway do what school are you coming from? Because are you either here or in one of the 2 middle schools? Which pathway do you want to take and why? And because we have all of their student data, so like biographical data, we don't need to ask them all of that. And so we wanted to make it, we did not want it to be cumbersome. And so when we go and talk to the kids about course selection in the middle schools, or here, if they're in 9th grade and they can 9th or 10th and can still get in the pathway, we talk about that and we send out the link and we have it on our website, so that kids and parents can locate it.
So multiple entry points.
Yes, as many as possible, like whatever people prefer. And we send it out to the 8th grade families, and we work, like, especially Lynette and I work very closely with the 8th grade principals, the middle school principals, and they're really working hard to redesign their elective courses to align with our pathways, so that kids kind of get a little bit of an exploratory before they come to the high school. It's not perfect yet. We're working on it. So, but it's awesome.
That's great. And I think that's really connected to the conversation that's going on in the chat about the course sequence and how schools work to develop not just the 4 course sequence, 2 technical and 2 advanced courses, but what other exploratories are supportive, and how you provide access to those courses to all students who are interested. There's another question in the chat about the flipped internship, and I thought this might be a moment to just describe in brief some of the different choices that schools make when planning for the 100-hour culminating experience. that's part of the pathway. Jess, do you want to speak to that? And then maybe Jennifer, you want to give the 30,000 foot overview.
Sure. So when I wrote the application for the Innovation Career Pathways, I did request that we could both do like a regular internship or a capstone, which I was envisioning could be like a reverse or flipped internship. Some other schools said sometimes they had trouble finding industry partners for like all their kids in computer science. So I was thinking of it as like a backwards internship or capstone. And when we visited Uxbridge, you know, they had a lot of amazing ideas as well about their capstones that we sort of, you know, stole some of those ideas as well. And so we are still in the planning phase. So like what Lina said is we're not at the point where our Innovation Pathways students are doing internships or capstones yet. But we have, you know, the capstone classes, there's a course number in our program of studies. When kids get there, they'll have that course number. The same thing for the internships. And we really just try to create programs for each kid. And I know like right now, I think we're up around 180 kids in the pathways. So it's a lot, but we'll get there. And it's just, you do need manpower or human power, I should say, to make sure that somebody's checking all the data, the kids are in the right classes. They find it rewarding and want to continue. So Lina was great and had her school counselors meet with they meet with all students when they're picking classes anyway, but specifically talk to the kids that are in the pathways about, are you happy? Like, is there anything we can do? Like making sure they're in the right course for next year. But there will be some students that step away from the pathway, you know, and you got to let them do that. Like, and obviously we don't want to lose kids, but I worked in another school and that is part of it. There are competing interests. And so you want to make it exciting for them. But sometimes they get up to the high school and they say, I picked this, but I really like this other one, or I want to try this. One thing is we did rearrange our internal schedule, like changing how we offered PE classes, like which semester to which grades and things like that. We also have a flex block twice a week in our schedule, which is where we do a lot of the school counseling work and the MyCap type of work. So there are some parts of our schedule that are specifically designed to make it more accessible to students that have like special ed services and things like that.
Jess, can I just chime in here? Because this is where there was a question in the chat about if we found participation in the pathway sometimes limits students' ability to explore other fields. And you just brought up a really good point about how we reworked our master schedule. And so it benefits the innovation career pathway students, especially students who are on IEPs or they have services that they need to fit in, but it also benefits students who want to take other classes for their electives or that are not specific to innovation pathways. So they still can have that flexibility. We're just encouraging students to have full schedules, which there's a benefit to that regardless if you're in a pathway or not. So again, we're just at the second year of doing this, but thankfully we have an admin team and a counseling department who really want students to follow their interest in their, if they are in part of a pathway, but if they also have other interests, they have that flexibility, but that's largely due to our new master schedule.
Well, and I also tried to make sure that kids taking these courses were also fulfilling graduation requirements. So like their computer science classes or the business classes within the digital media pathway are part of their graduation requirements. There's the art requirement is addressed. Their business requirement is addressed. Ray was a genius in planning the two new pathways, starting them in biology, which every student takes, and so that's part of what they're already doing already. And so, we try your best to make the courses not an addition to, sometimes they will be, but especially in 9th and 10th grade when kids have less wiggle room, at least for us, in their schedule.
Okay, so we have some questions coming into the chat, and some of them are specific to the application process and planning grant process, and those slides are upcoming in just a moment. So I don't think we're going to be able to answer all the questions live today, But as we go into resources, we're going to mention a bunch of ways that you can seek answers to your questions through our Community of Practice website, and also perhaps through follow-up with our guest presenters today. So before we move on, I just want to say to the Reading team, thank you so much. There is really nothing like your direct experience and the expertise that you've built through that experience to share with folks who are just at the beginning of this process. And you've really highlighted the importance of working through your challenges, learning from your challenges, building on the assets and interests of your students and your staff. And all of that is such great advice for folks who are considering beginning the application process. So please stay with us. If there are questions that you can answer in the chat, I'd encourage you to do that. And we're going to now go forward a couple of slides so that we can provide some more information about the application cycle this year. So this is on 2 slides. The application cycle is broken into Part A and Part B, and we've got 1 slide for each. And Jennifer, I'll pass to you to highlight the critical things for folks to be focusing on at this stage.
All right. So lots of questions in the chat about the planning grant. I think we'll talk about that on subsequent slides, but really the planning grant is designed to provide you with some resources to prepare your Part A application. And we are in the process of, actually this is part of a broader scope of work for the summer for our office at DESE, but sort of revisiting the entire designation, the designation and program approval processes that we do, both Chapter 74 as well as Innovation Career Pathways. Please don't fret. I'm going to post the Part A application probably tomorrow, maybe early next week. It's going to look very similar. You know, for those of you who have engaged in the process in the past, it's going to look very similar to what you've seen before. We are moving to a platform, actually, it's called CHAMP, that will be used for multiple offices at DESE. It's very exciting. It's going to give us a lot more visibility into what you guys are doing in districts, and hopefully help us better coordinate the work and all the ways in which we engage with districts. So stay tuned. That Part A application will be going up soon. Ultimately, you will submit in that CHAMP platform. We'll make sure that you have all the advice and support that you need to get that done. So shortly you'll see that Word document post for Part A. And I would encourage you, the elements are going to be very similar to what winds up going in CHAMP. So you can start working on that when it posts. Of course, we're here at the Prospective Applicant Workshop. Over the summer, in the months of June and July, we'll set aside some time to do one-on-one intake sessions with you. So districts can schedule a time to meet with me, to meet with DESE staff, to meet with Annie, or CCE members, to talk about specific questions that you might have. So you'll hear about some sign-up opportunities for that when you're coming back from the summer, and then starting in the school year, we will have some additional technical assistance events. I think that we traditionally do something like a welcome back sort of webinar in the early part of the school year. We'll have office hours, which are not mandatory, but just an open time for folks who have questions to come and meet with us. And then October, that's really the first deadline that you'll have for the designation process. Part A will be due, I believe it's going to be October 26th, this next school year. In October and November, your materials will be reviewed by a team of folks at DESE, and sometimes we engage folks in the Executive Office of Education, sometimes Department of Higher Education. Folks are outside our office, but we give your materials a thorough look. And then we get back to you as soon as we can, like usually around Thanksgiving, letting you know whether you're going to be invited to advance to Part B. So it is a 2-phase process. Like Annie was saying, there's a Part A and a Part B. Really at this point, you'll want to focus on the Part A, which is more the planning phase. For Part B, this is where we expect things to be a bit more concrete. This is when we're asking for various policies you have. We want to see a copy of your application. Like Reading was saying, they keep it very, very simple, but definitely more in-depth information requested at this phase. The Part B is due, I think it's going to be due February, like the first week of February, certainly before your February break, to DESE. When you come back from the holidays, we have more technical assistance events. We do office hours again. We take some time in February to review your materials, and we also have a complimentary applicant interview process. So each school will meet with DESE, and it's an opportunity to round out the written submission. So this is when we ask clarifying questions. We have some questions we ask of all applicants. It's to really be a dialogue and get a sense of your readiness to implement upon designation. I personally have done 100% of the interviews that have ever been conducted since the inception of Innovation Career Pathways, and I love the process. And I'm not just saying that, just to say it. I think that it's really constructive. I always emerge with a much better understanding of how things are actually working and your readiness to implement. So not something for you to be fearful of. It's not intended as a gotcha at all. It's really because we worship the written word so much at DESE, it's good to humanize the process. So those happen usually when you're back from your winter break. They take a couple, 2.5 weeks, just because there are a lot of applicants. There have been historically a lot of applicants the last couple of years. And then usually by the end of March or early April, that's when we let you know about designation. So those are conferred by the DESE commissioner, conferred by acting Commissioner Johnson this past cycle. Not sure who we'll have for our commissioner this next year, but that's, it's a time for celebration. We wind up doing usually a new applicant, or not new applicant, that's where we are, a new designee celebration on the heels of that. But as you can see, it's a protracted process, as I mentioned before, but it's built out this way, not to be laborious. And there's, obviously a lot of work that goes into this, but it's intended to also infuse supports throughout the process. So funding, lots of questions spiraling in the chat about funding. So there's a planning grant opportunity, and we've done this like since the inception. Like I said before, they're intended to support preparing for designation. This year, the maximum award will be up to $15,000, and we are going to be giving preference to LEAs who have not received Innovation Career Pathways grants in the past. They're going to be due this year. We're actually going to have 2 deadlines. There's going to be a June deadline as well as a September deadline. So we'll have, funds, at each point in the process, but it is competitive. So you're going to need to meet the deadlines. We can't consider any applications that are submitted late. So stay tuned for that. When those do post, we'll let you know via the listserv. And then for folks who get the designation, there are implementation and support grants, and those can be used to focus on a myriad of things. Highlighted here are a few examples: staffing, instructional resources, career resources. The fiscal 25 maximum award is $75,000. So there are actually 5 years of funding for Innovation Career Pathways School. So there is a planning grant. Consider that, as planning, getting you to designation. And then once you have the designation, there's that initial $75,000 award for that first year of implementation. And then for years 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's a $50,000 maximum award. So 5 years of funding, $75,000, first year of implementation, 50, 50, 50, 50. I hope that makes sense. And then for technology and equipment, which is not eligible, DESE grants don't cover that. So don't put in for computers, don't put in for equipment, which we consider anything above $5,000. We've had a lot of questioning of those expenses this year, as folks amend grants and put in for things. But technology and equipment, the source for that funding is the Workforce Skills Cabinet Skills Capital Grant Program that is administered by the Executive Office of Education. So not DESE. We do work closely with them, but there is just recently a deadline for that. Those are obviously your bigger dollars for capital expenses. So I know that some folks here have gotten that award in the past. Like, I don't know if you want to chime in the chat, about your experiences. I know that Jess had, like, if you don't get the Skills Capital Grant one time, like, keep trying. It is a great source of those bigger dollars.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I know that those are high priority questions for folks. And I think if you have been with us for the last 80 minutes of this workshop, at this point, you may be feeling quite full of information, but also full of questions. There is a lot to learn. So I want to make sure that we take a few minutes to really guide you in how to pursue the questions that are highest priority for your school team right now. And one of the things that we want to share is that we have just relaunched the Massachusetts Innovation Career Pathways website. And Allison has shared the link to that site in the chat. And I want to invite you to click along with me as I talk a little bit about what you'll find on this new homepage, and specifically in the section that's curated for prospective applicants. So those of you who are longtime members of this community of practice have been bearing with our old Google site for a long time, and we're really happy to have this much better organized, navigable, accessible site ready for everyone's use. Jennifer mentioned the listserv, and we really encourage everyone on the call to make sure you get signed up for our listserv. You can do that on the website. And I'll talk about some of the other new features, but if you can start by putting by clicking on the prospective applicants icon, that will take you to a page where we've curated information just for folks who are beginning the process. So, linked there, you will find a variety of resources just for folks who are early in the planning process. There is a link on that prospective applicants page that takes you off of the maicp.org site and onto the DESE site. And that's an important distinction to realize. So CCE develops and maintains the MAICP site for this community of practice, but the official DESE webpage is where you will find the official DESE information and documents, such as the posting of the Part A application process and document that Jennifer mentioned a few minutes ago. So you can find that link on the prospective applicants page. There are also extensive resources, a library of resources built up over the almost 6 years that CCE has been partnering with DESE for this community of practice. And on the prospective applicants page, there's a link to a filtered or curated set of resources that are high priority for people in the planning process. You are welcome to browse all of the resources or use a keyword search. You can filter by industry sector as well as by guiding principle to help you get a sense of what is available in this resource library. And we really encourage you to check out the resource library and also the frequently asked questions section of this website. That FAQ has also been built up over the years and really reflects the expertise of the community of practice. So before you reach out to Jennifer or a peer ambassador, we really encourage you to check to see if your question is answered in the FAQ or addressed in the resource library. Speaking of peer ambassadors, that's an incredible resource to this community. Jessica Callanan is one of our peer ambassadors this year. And if you click on the peer ambassador link, you'll see that there are profiles of this group of colleagues in the field who are doing the work. They provide information on their designated pathways, their areas of expertise. They link to their school innovation career pathways websites, which is another great way to find examples of course scope and sequences, applications. Sometimes there's information on internship applications. All kinds of things are shared generously by members of our community, especially the peer ambassadors. And we really encourage you to check those out, as well as reaching out to peer ambassadors for questions or even to explore school visits as part of your process. Our new website also has a portal. And so this is a brand new feature where you can set up a login and then a profile for yourself in our community of practice portal. When you do that, it will enable you to identify yourself and by your role, your school, your MassHire region, the pathway, areas of your interest or of your designations. And when you do that, you can then access the chat board, which will enable you to connect with people who can help discuss problems of practice that you're encountering or design questions that you're coming up against. So we are really excited about this portal and all of the new features of this website, and really want your feedback on it as you explore it, because we think it's has the potential to really be a great resource for the community of practice. And as we come even closer to the end of our 90 minutes, just a quick review of some of the lessons learned and tips that some of our peer ambassadors, the 3 cohorts over the last 3 years, have highlighted as high priority next steps for schools who are considering starting the application process. I think these really resonate with what you heard from the Reading team. It's important to think about your big why. What's the rationale for your pathways and how they align with your school's mission or vision of a graduate? It's also super important to build an inclusive team that is your school and district members as well as community members. And as I mentioned, please sign up for our mailing list if you haven't already done so. In addition, watch your email and our website for information about the summer intake meetings that Jennifer mentioned. And in the next 6 or 8 weeks, we hope to be posting the events calendar for the coming year. So there's way too much to share to pack one 90-minute workshop with everything. We have a full year of offerings that include virtual and in-person events. Some of them are targeted to support the needs of applicants. Others are more for folks who are already implementing, but everybody is welcome at all of them. We have a series of professional learning communities that are co-facilitated by peer ambassadors, and really invite you to lead your own learning around the development of your pathways. So consider mapping out a plan now that will make sure that folks are taking advantage of those offerings to the community of practice, that your high priority tasks are getting attended to, and that the stakeholder input that's so important to drive your pathway process is being gathered across the year. And last but not least, we invite you to complete a survey about your experience at today's workshop. We ask for feedback at the end of every event we hold. Allison will pop the survey link. Oh, she's already done it. The survey link is in the chat. And please do take a minute while your thoughts are fresh to give us feedback on today and make any suggestions. As I mentioned, we're in the planning phase of next year's offerings, and we really do take your questions and requests for our offerings to heart. So this survey link will also come back to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. Jess, thank you for putting your email into the chat, and I will include it, if it's okay with you, in the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow to all registrants for today's event. We really appreciate everyone who attended today. We look forward to supporting you in your pathway application process over the coming year and beyond as you implement pathways. Thank you again to all of our guest presenters today. You're amazing. We couldn't do it without you. And thanks to our DESE partners. We wish everyone a good day. Thank you and see you soon.